Hello there, I'm Black Bright News, and I went to see One Love Bob Marley last night. And what did I think? This isn't a review, this is just my opinion. What did I think? Well, I guess it depends on your expectations. I think in order for me, um, how do I put this? It's very, very difficult because while Kingsley did a brilliant job at emulating Bob Marley, for me, the first thing I thought was Bob Marley isn't that tall, he's not that big, he's not that bulky. The face looked good, the locks were convincing, his accent was convincing 99% of the time. But if you, I mean, most people who are going to see Bob Marley, and they make it quite clear who Bob Marley is. But most people, if they want to know who he was, who he hung around with, who his band leaders were, there was no way of knowing. You had to kind of guess, you know, who's that and who's that, and it it was brilliant movie in its own right. It didn't have to even be called Bob Marley. It could have just been called One Love. It would still have been very effective movie. I am one of these people who have a stickler when people of a certain nationality um, play a role that's not theirs. And LaShawn, she's not Jamaican background, and she didn't speak Jamaican either, and it wasn't convincing her language. So it kind of rattled me a little bit. People are saying, why don't they pick Jamaican artists to play Jamaican roles? Jamaicans have to remember they have been stereotyped by their character. Their character is one of bombastiousness and, you know, rebelliousness and don't like taking instructions, don't like taking orders. They have a reputation of being quite resistant and non compliant. And so when you're dealing with a Jamaican, unless you are a Jamaican yourself, you're not going to understand the character of the Jamaican, that what that makes the part authentic. The Jamaicans in the film who were Jamaican is what gave that movie authenticity. And Kingsley, he did a really, really good job, to be honest. So I can't knock him. I think only twice I could kind of pick up and said, yeah, he's not a Jamaican. But for the most part, he did a pretty good job. But you cannot. The thing is with Jamaicans, you have to take the good with the bad, but they will not let you down. When it comes to something like this, they will not let you down because they are authentic. They cannot be anything than what they are. You can't train them like a dog. And that is why they lose out on parts like this because they cannot be tamed and they cannot be trained. They know what to do instinctively. If you give them a script, they'll go away and they'll work at it and they'll come back with what you want, but maybe not how you want it in a tamed kind of way. And what that does for the movie is that it takes something away from it. And I think what else took something away from it? I think what they should have done is they should have had, this is just in my opinion, they should have had the faces up front. Who was who? Who was Peter Tosh? Who was Bunny Wailer? Who was Tyrone? Well, you knew who Tyrone was because they called him out. They called out his name. But unless they said, this is Rita, oh, hi, Rita, and this is Bob or Skipper, and this, oh, yes, hello, Chris, you wouldn't know who they are. And I don't know if the producers are assuming everybody knows Bob Marley. They probably know Bob Marley in and of himself, but Bob Marley was made Bob Marley with everybody else who was with him, who grew up with him, who were a part of his journey. And it's important that they are incorporated into who Bob Marley is. And if you're not incorporating each the story, it doesn't have to be massive lines, but it has to be. You have to be able to recognize those people who built Bob Marley, who encouraged him, who picked him up when he was down, and who were a part of his journey. But I personally was left wondering, who's that? I wonder who that one is. So where's Peter Tosh? So where's Bunny Wailer? You know, what I did love is the way they he died. It was so dignified. It was so beautiful because I was expecting him to be lying on a hospital bed, and waning and just deteriorating. I thought that's how they was going to show his demise through cancer. But they didn't. He rode on a horse with Haile Selassie and he says, I'm going to take you home. And that touched me. I thought that was absolutely beautiful, a beautiful ending to the story. And like I said, the story in and of itself was a brilliant story. It was a bit disjointed, though. It didn't flow like he was, it's almost like there was a part where Bob Marley started kicking up his what do you call the people? Promoter, the guy that's supposed to promote the show. I think his name was Don. Yeah, Don Curtis or Don. Oh, sorry, I can't remember his name. But he started kicking him up and punching him up out of the blue, and there's no build up to that. There's none. You're like, why is he doing that? And my partner said, oh, it's because he owed him money. He's been stealing the money. Now, we saw in a couple of scenes before him taking money. And we saw when Rita, at one point in the house, said to him, he's fiddling you, he's taking a cut. But it was like he was performing on a show. The next thing you know, he's out in a corridor somewhere, and the guy who's fiddling him is there, and next thing he's hitting him, and goodness knows what, in a really vicious way. And you're like, why is he doing that? It was out of context. We're supposed to know the story. We're supposed to know who these people are, and I think it was a bit, it could have been a bit more cohesive. Some kind of, I don't know if it was the budget that made it so short, why they had to kind of just stick stuff in. And the parts that they put in were relevant. It was really good. But I think there could have been a bit more cohesiveness. There was too much jumping around, and you had to make sense of it yourself, or try to make sense of it yourself. And if you didn't know the story at all, I think you'd be kind of lost. But for people who just went to listen to the music, I don't think he um, sang a full song, but it was beautiful the way that they brought the songs into the movie. Because I think if you'd never really listened to the lyrics, this is how you would listen to the lyrics. You'd actually listen, and it made me want to go and buy the Exodus album. I mean, I've got it. I've got the vinyl. I got it when it first came out. But it made me want to listen to it again, and I can't be bothered to go to the attic and go and dig it out. But it made me want to listen to the words, because back then in the 70s and 80s, I didn't listen to words. I just listened to the beat, and then you just think, oh, it's Bob Marley. But the words are so profound. And I think that's what made him an activist. And that what was interesting is that the disapproval of Chris Blackwell and his move and Bob's movement towards liberation and activism was very, very subtle. And it wasn't clear that that was the reason. You didn't see none of that conflict. So, Yeah, it was a really good movie. I enjoyed it, but not as a Bob Marley movie, but